Well, hey there, and welcome back to Behind the Pulpit for, what are we calling this, Season 3? Season 3, I think. We're in September of 2024. We've been gone for 6 weeks. Just before we jumped on here, we felt like it's been longer than 6 weeks, but it's not. 6 weeks ago, Pastor Dave and I were here, I think wearing these same shirts because we just got them. And now it's been 6 weeks. We've washed them a few times, at least I have. And we're back. We're back on Behind the Pulpit. Pastor Dave, welcome.
Hey man, that was not an exciting enough relaunch intro like this get started. Like that was a low energy.
That was low energy?
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. Should we do a redo? Should we do it again? Hey there, welcome back from Behind the Pulpit. We're gonna go. Bad boys, bad boys. What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
All right,
well, get the coffee going, man.
That's right. We're going to have an action-packed fall series. We are going through the Book of Revelation, so that's going to be a lot of the things that we talk about. We're going to be diving back in the news. Did anything happen in the last 6 weeks in the news, Pastor Dave?
I didn't think I had to watch because we don't have to do this show.
That's
so I figured I could take it a break.
We are fully immersed in the fall. Lots of things are happening. We're going to be talking about going to Mars. We're going to be talking about books. I know you missed. I signed up. I got on the X, so now I X'd Elon Musk and asked if I could jump on the rocket launch in a few years.
Well, you need to I got to cover your preaching schedule. You got to tell your co-pastor
we can do it virtually now. Maybe from the middle of space you start preaching.
All right, as long as you're available. Right. I don't know about the Wi-Fi connection up there, but
Book War's back, and we're gonna have we got some questions today. It's gonna be exciting.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when he comes for you? The disciples sang that around the fire.
Pastor Dave, what would you add? How was your August? What did you do?
Hey, we had a great summer. August was the time where we finally Julie and I entered into the season where we have all of our kids now graduated from high school and off into their college years. So all my children are in school right now. So Alex is in her last year of law school. Michaela's a sophomore at Cedarville. Felicity is now a freshman at TCNJ. So it's a whole new phase of life for the Henschel household, and we're getting them settled in, getting them dropped off, and now they are fully dived into their fall schedule. I know we're just launching for the fall, but they launched like a month ago.
What is that like? What is that like to have no kids in your house? Like right now, my kids are waking up in the middle of the night and crying and saying, "Daddy, Daddy."
Right.
And then I have to console them.
Right.
What's it like to be on the other end of that?
Well, your kids start definitely making fun of you for everything you say, wear, do. You are now officially like an old person in their eyes. You have no clue what's going on in the world. You have no clue about style.
I see. Okay.
And it's like it's a whole different world, man. It's
you sound depressed.
It's reflective. Midlife crisis time.
Just laugh it off. By the way, this new clock in front of me is very intimidating. I didn't know it was going to be yelling at me.
It's eventually going to be back up on the wall.
Okay, it's letting me know this is how much time is going on. And that those milliseconds are just screaming at me right now.
I think we should have that when you're preaching, just so that you see.
Oh, okay.
Hey,
just me?
You're burning time.
There you go.
I've never preached too long in my life. I don't know what you're
That's right.
talking
There
about.
you go. Never a. Okay, so let's move on here. Let's move on to our segment we haven't talked about in a while. Let's do In the News. All right, so we're back within the news. Lots of things that have been happening, Pastor Dave. Lots of controversial things, lots of unprecedented things in the political sphere. But we won't talk about that today, Pastor Dave. What I really want to talk about is Elon Musk, who I guess he's also been commenting on the elections and all that other stuff.
He's involved.
He's got his hands in everything. And
I heard that he might be part of some sort of committee to make the government more efficient.
That was one thing. A whole country banned his social media platform.
Brazil, right?
There was protests in the Capitol. It was kind of crazy. So but what I want to talk about is the fact that I saw that SpaceX, this is the headline, SpaceX will start launching starships to Mars in 2026. So he just put out a thing there and said, in 2 years, we're going to start launching unmanned spacecraft to go to Mars. And then if that all goes well, in 4 years, we're going to be sending people to Mars, and then we're going to have a city there in 20 years. That was what he put out there. How does that strike you?
20 years, that's like 2044. We're going to have a city on Mars.
That's what he said.
That is ambitious.
And how does that affect your view of Revelation? Does that change your view of Revelation in the future as a result of hearing that?
I got to think about that.
What?
I don't know.
I was wondering how that would, my eschatology, if that would be impacted by the fact that people will be living on Mars. I did give that some thought a couple years ago, but I didn't come to a good conclusion. I think one of the
Seems
things...
like a good book idea.
It might be a good
There's
book
the
idea.
premillennial view, there's the amillennial view,
And
there's the postmillennial view, then there's
Mars millennial
the Martian view.
The Martian.
The new heavens and new earth, it's actually Mars.
Yeah.
It's not really Earth.
My goodness. So, yeah, I think that's going to require us giving some thought going forward. How do we interact with technology? I mean, we certainly have the doctrine of common grace, like God gives common grace to people to benefit. But if we're able to leave and go to another planet, how does that affect your how do you think about that theologically? We're going to have to give that some thought, Pastor Dave.
I think even the Lord's going to draw the line there. Be like, when I said common grace, I meant within reason, like on this planet, guys.
Okay. So God's common grace does not extend out to Mars. It only here on this planet.
I guess it's universal. I should
Yeah.
watch my tongue there.
But this was crazy to me. Like I literally saw this and said, "Wow, that's really quick. 2 years."
If you can get Bob to say "wow" while he's watching the news, that's a win. So there's your challenge.
That is a win for me, for sure. So that's happening in the news. Lots of other things were going on. I do want to make, maybe, Tim, I thought about making a segment each week to recap the Rings of Power episode. I don't know if you caught up on those. People still hate it. They still hate it, but eventually there's going to be a pretty cool battle, I'm told. And we'll see what happens.
I haven't
with
had
that.
the chance to watch it because I've been so wrapped up in the tennis of the last 2 weeks. But I think this week I'm finally going to get in there. So maybe we can start that
Okay,
segment.
so next week, let's talk a little bit about your first thoughts. There's going to be a 5th episode coming out this week. And, let's debrief. There's a presidential debate tomorrow night. Pretty consequential one, I think.
Could be the one and only.
It could be the one. I actually think it's probably going to be the one and only, but we'll see what happens
And
there.
what's their policy on microphones?
They are not open like this, so there can be no interrupting, like I just did to you.
So someone has to like really, really man those microphones and turn off and on exactly at the right moment.
There is a person who's got to turn it up and down. And
Tim, how would you feel about that kind of pressure? I mean, if you were like in control of the two candidates and the whole world was watching, and you had to like make sure you hit the button at the right time as the production manager, I feel like a little intimidated by that.
I feel that's that's definitely a lot of pressure. I feel like you really got to find someone who really is down the middle though, because I feel like there's so much room for that person to kind of act as their own moderator and like have one opinion over another and just cut the person off early.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's got to be some serious vetting going on there.
Oh, if they mess up, they could affect the election, right? It could be pretty consequential muting of somebody.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Is there such a person? Are they?
I don't know.
Do they exist, Tim? I mean,
Not anymore, I don't think.
I don't think so either. But
my
I don't know,
good friend,
at
when
least
I'm
someone
talking
who's
crazy,
really
he says,
honest.
Dave, that's not a place. I'm going to say
Dave,
to you, Tim, that's not a real person. I don't know if that.
What I think is funny is, though, like, what if you start shouting and your mic is off and you can just hear the person in the background, yelling?
Because like your mic could probably pick up me a little bit.
Yeah,
So
you
they
would.
have to
It'd be clear you weren't right here, but they would still.
I was
going
going
to
to say one of them
stuff.
definitely would probably keep speaking up and probably use the other person's mic, but
It's
say
true.
Lean over and
Let's see. It would sound like that. Hey, get in your microphone
Wow.
space. My goodness.
man, I feel
You know what I miss? There used to have
Not welcome
There was
over there.
always a first debate. There was a second debate that was a town hall, and there was some pretty memorable moments of people like walking over. Do you remember back in the Bush and Gore
I do.
debates? George Bush is answering, and Al Gore like walked up to him and looked like he was going to hit him.
Yeah.
And George Bush was like, "Hi."
he gave him the head nod. He gave him the head nod. Let me try to do my impersonation. So you're Gore creeping up in my space, and I'm like that. That's what he
What's
did.
going on?
Just like, hey, can I
That
help
was
you?
that was a
You
moment.
need something?
That
Yeah.
was a moment. By the speaking of debate moments, I did see the Reagan movie a couple weeks ago, and that we're reliving some of those very famous Reagan debate moments about age and there you go again and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
apparently that had the largest a Rotten Tomatoes disparity between audience score and
Audiences
Rotten
loved
Tomatoes
it. All the critics hated it.
It's like 77% disparity, like number one all time.
Again, who is this down the middle person, guys? Is there like a 2.5 Rotten Tomato score that exists?
I don't know.
It's either you love it
I would
or hate
recommend
it.
you go see it, though.
Everything's binary.
Dennis Quaid was very good. All right, and then the last thing in the news, there was a... let's revisit something we talked about over the summer, was Russel Brand had an interview and then basically got down and was praying, and it looks like he became a Christian.
I watched
like
that
legit
interview.
became a Christian.
I was skeptical at first because I felt like his original testimony was mixed with some weird New Age things like in the background and stuff. But that was like I think in April when he was getting baptized. This interview, I think it was last week, right?
Yeah, it was recent.
First, like right before they got on stage, Russell Brand goes, "Hey, can we pray together real quick?" First,
And he was like,
Tucker's like, "Okay." So they prayed. And then I felt like his testimony was very reformed. Like, this dude's a Calvinist. He's
wow.
like, no, you think
It's like quoting Spurgeon.
You think that you're, figuring God out intellectually. And he's like, no, I didn't figure anything out. God chose me.
Whoa.
And I'm like, well, there's some
Little
serious
bit of doctrine
good
of election right
Reformed
there.
theology coming from him. And then he closed in prayer. And it was cool. It was cool to see. Here's a guy that's given his life over to the quintessential Hollywood experience, like, women, licentious living, just total partier, and he was very open about the emptiness of all of that, and that just didn't take him anywhere where he needed to go, and then he's turned to Christ, who now has taken over, and he's renounced all of his idols. It was a compelling interview. You guys should check it out. It's on YouTube. It's really refreshing.
Very good. Well, that was a big news segment. There was more we could say, but let's just pause there, and we'll save some of the stories for next week. We'll do a Rings of Power recap and other things as well. But good to be back in the news. Lots of things are happening. We'll be praying as we go through the fall. The other segment that we haven't done in a while is the Great Book War. Pastor Dave, did you bring a book today?
No, sir. I defer to you. And
Okay.
I see that you have a wonderfully colorful vintage 1970s book there going on.
So in honor of our eschatology series, we're going through the book of Revelation and our underground sessions that's coming up on October the 6th. We're talking about end times, different views on that. The book I'm going to recommend today is the book called The Last Things by George Eldon Ladd. And you can see it's very 1978. I think that color actually was the color of the Millington pews when I first got here before we redesigned the sanctuary.
Tim, can you confirm that reality?
Yeah, I'm looking at the
mustard
book
yellow.
title right here. You have the brown and the white, and then that yellow might be spot on for the cushions there.
Exactly.
What you're missing is the little red stitching.
This is like a brownish red.
remember
Here, how
you
about
remember
this
the
on the
little
back?
red stitching?
I think I do.
Yeah, but his name is in red right here. So
Oh, it was red. It was like red on the Crayola crayon.
it is, yes. So anyway, so this Dave gave a few different positions. This would be a mostly futurist position by George Eldon Ladd, who was a professor at Fuller Seminary in the middle of the 20th century, and he popularized an end-time scheme called historic premillennialism, which is the position that I hold, that my seminary held. So if you want to know a little bit more about that...
What seminary is that?
That's Denver Seminary. That's what this book is about. He goes through all the major questions about Israel and the prophetic scriptures and the intermediate state, kingdom of God. He was big on the inaugurated eschatology. The kingdom of God is already here, but it's not yet here. That was one of his big themes, and of course this would be a post-tribulational rapture position in this book. But this is a distillation of some of the other books that he's written. So pick up Ladd. You can see that perspective. That's one of the perspectives that's going to be represented at our underground sessions on October the 6th.
What is that yellow?
This I believe.
Picture.
I believe this is a trumpet in honor of the 7 trumpets that will be coming up in our Revelation series.
Shofar.
The shofar.
If
blowing.
you've ever
Yeah.
used the phrase "already but not yet," you are indebted to George Eldon Ladd.
Yeah, although some
He
people would
coined
say
that phrase.
Voss came up with it originally,
The
but
concept.
he definitely popularized it. He
did.
was the guy. The already, the not yet, the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is a thread through the scriptures. So there you go. That's my book.
Interesting book choice. Did you buy that new? Because I feel like they should have updated the cover.
I don't think they've updated it because I did buy it somewhat recently. So
Wow.
this is how they're still printing, I guess.
All right.
There you go.
That's the way the kids do things these days.
That's the way they did it in the 70s. I'm sure he was wearing bell-bottom, jeans when he was writing the book.
was. Listening to some Bob Marley and
Yeah, there you go.
Bob, you mentioned your seminary before. Is there any like inter-seminary competition? Like, regular schools have like your standard colleges, they have like sports teams and they compete against each other. Is there any
Sports?
not necessarily even sports, like spelling bees, I don't know, Greek offs?
Spelling bee.
Like
He just said a Greek off.
Spell premillennialism.
it's like who can quickly identify modalism? Like is it like is inter-seminary Jeopardy? Is there a thing there?
Well, I don't know about that, but
Tim, I think you just spiced up the world of theological education. I like your idea. I think there should be more competition in the seminary field. I think
We
that's
got
a
two
great idea.
DTSs sitting next to each other right here. Like
We do. I think yours is
different
just
DTS.
DS.
Now it's just DS, Denver
okay.
Seminary. But it was Denver Theological Seminary for a season.
It was.
Yeah. It was originally Conservative Baptist Theological Seminary.
Of
which
Denver.
Is in
Right.
Denver. And then it was Denver Theological Seminary, and now it's just Denver Seminary.
Right.
So now they're more interdenominational, but
Pretty soon it'll
historically,
just be called Denver.
Probably. Yeah.
Like, what if there was a
Why would you say
national
I went to Denver,
championship in some sort of fun thing for? You guys should both reach out and try to start that.
I like this, Tim.
Okay.
Like, I think they have no.
I'll
Don't they
post
do
on
like
the
Jeopardy
Twitter and
competitions
say-
like for colleges? There's like school trivia things that they show on TV. and
It's
they bring-
definitely possible.
I think we need that.
I
think
will say
we should
that
host
there
it.
A
was
sermon off.
There was like an
Sermon
awards sort of ceremony that became quite competitive. Specifically, there was top preachers of the senior class, and 4 of them got to speak in chapel during the last week of their senior semester. And that got kind of ugly. That got kind of like, hey, can you just rejoice with those who rejoice here instead of like accepting the fact that someone else is superior to you homiletically? So there was some fleshly competition going
Oh, my
on there
goodness. All
by the
right.
best preachers. So a little bit of that, Tim, but I think there could be more. We could do some.
I think I'm going to
else.
make it a long-term goal to get representatives from 4 different seminaries here, and Noah and I will put together a competition, and we will award a trophy.
Well, we
you
had-
heard it here first, folks. This
we-
is where the idea first germinated.
We had discussed maybe reaching out to Daryl Bach and Craig Blomberg, who represent our respective seminaries, to do a podcast. Maybe we should do that, and then we can ask them their thoughts on a inter-seminary competition.
Speaking of Dr. Bach, I finished this 2-volume Luke commentary because I did the last chapter on Luke. And I got to the last page and a little tear came in my eye. And then I decided I'm going to thank him. So I wrote an email to Dr. Bach. I'm like, listen, man, it'd take me 5 lifetimes to write this thing. I don't know how you produce what you produce, but thank you. You didn't really leave any stone unturned. It's been a great
Wow.
blessing to me as we studied this over 9 months. And he wrote back nicely and said, Dave, that you're the kind of pastor we write these for. We're glad it was helpful. Thanks for the encouragement.
Wonderful.
So maybe he'll come on the show.
There we go. We'll see.
If you're watching, Dr. Bach, we're ready for you, man.
I'm sure he's watching every week. He tunes in every week to Behind the Pulpit.
We can combine podcasts. We can do the table and behind the pulpit.
That's right,
The
the
2 different
table.
services.
And we need to check our Dallas views.
There you go. All right, so that's the Great Book War. Maybe next week you can recommend a different perspective on something on the end times. But speaking of, let's move into our sermon recap. Pastor Dave kicked off Revelation.
Do we want to do audience questions first?
We're getting there, Tim. We're
Okay,
getting
cool.
there. Hold on.
Cool.
This time thing is yelling at me.
I was
right
too
now.
busy running around trying to figure out what wasn't plugged in, so I wasn't at the
I'm trying to
meeting
get this
that.
done in about 14 minutes. So let's see. I got the thing here.
All right,
So
you let me
Dave,
know
why
when.
don't you recap your sermon, and then maybe we can have a couple questions that were related to it, and then we can talk about your charts and the one story that did not make it into your sermon that Dave was crying when we asked him to cut it.
I
in the
can't
month of the
believe
other
that
day.
it didn't capture your attention with this awesome story. Revelation chapter 1, verses 1 through 8 is a prologue to the book of Revelation. It's an introduction. It's a wonderful section that has high theology, high Christology. It's just setting us up for a wonderful study. It's the most beautiful book in the New Testament by far, I would say. It's picturesque. It has just powerful imagery that captures our imaginations. So the first sermon was just about like, what is the book of Revelation and what are the different views and what are the major themes? So it was a kickoff sermon to whet everybody's appetite to see here's where we're headed over the next 4 months together.
Wonderful, and you did a wonderful job giving us an overview with charts and the different perspectives and what it's about. I left feeling very, very full, very full.
Tim took a picture of me with my charts, and I thought that was kind of funny.
Just the guy in his
And
charts.
I'm just having some fun there.
There it
it's
is.
like I'm in this theological classroom.
It doesn't look like he's smiling, but he's smiling on the inside.
I think I took 30 pictures in a row because during that portion of the sermon, you were looking at your notes, and I was like, "There's a money shot here somewhere. I just gotta wait for you to look up."
There it is.
And there it was. So,
All right.
you like that?
Do you want to do a quick explainer? Remind us of what's going on behind you right there. There's like a hammer and a.
There's 4 major views of Revelation. How do you interpret the book? And so the cross is at the beginning of the timeline, and the judgment symbolized by that gavel coming down in a courtroom scene is at the end of the timeline. So the first one at the top is the preterist view. That views the book of Revelation as occurring in things that have occurred in the past, primarily in the first century, and the destruction of Jerusalem. The locale seems to be about Jerusalem. In chapter 11, it looks like the temple's still standing. We have some evidence for the fact that maybe Nero is being referred to by the number 666. John says these things are going to happen very soon, very near, very quickly. And so in this view, things like, the destruction of Jerusalem are highlighted. The second view is the futurist view. That's the view that says this is coming later on. There's a future coming world ruler, and the Antichrist is going to have a one world government, a one world economy, and most importantly, a one world religion that centers around him for worship. So that's the futurist view, and all of those things are yet to come. Then we have the historicist view, which is like, hey, this spans the whole history of the church from like Pentecost all the way to the second coming, and there's different ages of the church. And that's interesting to read about. It's not very common today. But that's the historicist view. Matthew Henry, shout out. And then there's the idealist view, which reads the book more symbolically. Like these are pictures, these are universal principles that happen in every single age. So if I could just summarize the views, here's like a soundbite way to say it. Preterism, all about the past. Futurism, all about the future. Historicism, it's all about church history. And then idealism it's all about the message. So those are the 4 views.
Well, that was a really helpful way of summarizing it. And then you mentioned a 5th one where sometimes people will combine some of these, where they might see the future as being the end of the book. Really, there's a future event. And other parts of the book are speaking about things that are, potentially past from our perspective, or they're things that are happening continually, and there's an intensification at the end. So there's different ways of putting things together in a more eclectic view.
Yeah.
Which you didn't have a chart for that, and I was quite disappointed.
I haven't
with
found
that.
the chart for that. Maybe I have to create one. But in the eclectic view,
I would buy that chart if you created an eclectic
I
view chart.
will work on it all series long. So in the eclectic view, like you might see, hey, chapter 17, that's the fall of Jerusalem. So you might say that's preterist right there. Okay, wait, chapter 19 and 20, that's the second coming, that's futurist there. And so you might see parts of the book one way, other parts of the book different ways.
Yeah.
And so that's the eclectic view.
Yeah, and you I know you don't want to take part in the book war before, but you did have one commentary that helps us to see all of those as you're going through. Maybe you should mention that.
Okay, yeah, check out Steve Gregg's book. He really did a nice job. I think he read a lot of commentaries on all of these different views and then put them all in 4 very nice, beautiful columns. You know why I like that book? The whole book's a chart. Every single page is a chart. There's a column for preterists. There's a column for futurists. There's a column for historicists. There's a column for idealists. Okay, here's how you read chapter 2 in all 4 ways. Here's how you read chapter 4 in all 4 ways. That kind of thing. So that's helpful if you're interested to know, well, how would this be interpreted if I took the other view? It's right there. Tim's like yawning over there, man. That's how boring this stuff is. I'm sorry.
Well, let me ask
I'm
you
really
a question.
interested in this.
Let me ask you a question. I imagine there's some people that come at this book from different perspectives. What's the big takeaway that we're hoping for this series as we're getting into it? I mean, you started to mention some cultural issues and how this could apply today, and at the end of the series, what are we hoping to get?
I think a lot of people are intimidated by Revelation, or they're scared of it, or they just feel it's too difficult. And I think that's a shame, so they marginalize the book. Really, what we hope to accomplish in this series is Revelation was written down to shore up courage in the people of God who are experiencing difficulties and tension with the culture in which they live. And so it's very perfect for the times that we live right now. We're living in a time where the culture's not always tender toward us who hold to our faith and the gospel. And, how do we relate in these times, and how do we stay true to the one who is faithful to us? And I think that that's really a good takeaway for us this season. We're going to hear a lot about politics and the elephant and the donkey, and Revelation says the Lamb wins. And so I think that's a good reminder that can keep us grounded during what sometimes can feel like an exhausting season of politics. Is there even a season of politics anymore now? It feels like politics just lasts the whole 4 years until the next election.
It's just
and
always
that can
is.
really be draining. And I think Revelation is like, well, you don't need to focus on that. Focus on the throne and be true to him, be faithful to him, and you're on the winning side, so you can endure. So
Very cool.
We're hoping that that's an encouragement throughout our series.
Good. Yeah, I love the way you talked about how a lot of times there's a conflict with the state, in the idealist view. That's constantly what's coming up. And even if you're taking a primarily futurist view, there's a future state that's going to be creating conflict with
maybe a
people of God.
climactic ending, maybe a sort of a trajectory of images that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and maybe at the end there's this gigantic beast that really just sort of takes over.
Right.
Who knows?
Kind of like Stranger Things. There's going to be a big bad at the end here.
That's interesting.
The big mind
I
flayer.
haven't
is gonna
thought
come
about
in.
that. But
Well, there you go.
The tentacles
Maybe
go
it'll
over
make
all of
make
the
its
earth.
way in there. All right. Well, hey, there's a couple questions that came in, but before we do that, I know there was one part that you really wanted.
Are you going to let me do this?
Yes.
This
you
is-
have the floor
Oh,
here
man.
for a
Thank
couple
you,
minutes
Bob.
to talk
Okay,
about this
so
thing that was meaningful.
I
to
was
you.
super excited about this really nerdy find.
comes.
If you read the Apocrypha, there's a section of the book of Esther that's added in as an apocalyptic introduction and conclusion to Esther. So if you know the story of Esther, you kind of understand what the apocalypse is talking about. So it's Mordecai, and the guy has a dream, and he writes down the dream in this weird, dreamy, apocalyptic style. And it's an amazing dream. There's this dragon. There's this stream that becomes a river. There's wars and earthquakes. And then at the end of Esther, he gives the interpretation. And he's like, let me tell you what that dream meant. It meant this. Oh, the little stream that became a river, that's Esther, who was a woman who became this mighty queen. And the two dragons were Mordecai and Haman, and we were at war with one another. And the earthquake and the war and the tumult was the battle between the Jews and the Persians at that time. He interprets the dream for us in a very historical way. So that piece of apocalyptic literature, for me, was like, oh, this is what it is. So you can see, as you read it, you're like, oh, that dream is a very symbolic way of describing real historical events in just a way that's really sensational. And so for me, it was like a test case, because we already know what happened in the book of Esther historically. And so it's like, okay, this is how apocalyptic literature would portray a historical, timeline like the book of Esther. And we're not accustomed to that. That sounds pretty weird. If you were to describe, the recent political season in terms of there were these two dragons, there was a war, there was a mighty soldier, there was some sort of, tornado, you're like, what is this guy talking about? Oh, what it was this, that's how that they would sometimes portray things. We're not used to that kind of flamboyance, but they were. And so to me, that was helpful to just understand apocalyptic literature. So if you're interested, it's in the Apocrypha. It's the introduction and conclusion to Esther, and it's the dream of Mordecai.
And you were using that as an example.
Thank you for letting me share that nerdy little
Absolutely.
Observation.
And you wanted to use it as an example of how symbolism works within Revelation.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
So
Precisely.
Exactly. Good. So, all right. So what do we have for the questions, Tim? There was 2 questions that came in. Let's take those in turn.
Yep. The first one I find actually really interesting, and I'll explain why in a second. The first question is, in Revelation 1:3, some translations mention blessings for reading the words of this book aloud, but other translations leave out aloud. Why is that? And so this question was actually texted to me, and the person that asked this question and myself kind of realized that even amongst, like, if you look at the spectrum of like the different versions of the Bible, so the NASB doesn't have allowed, but the ESV does.
The NASB.
So, or the NASB, they're both sort of on that similar side of the spectrum, being more word for word, but they have different translations for this verse.
Yeah,
so
I
I'm
can help
very,
you with
very
that.
curious to know the answer here.
Sure. So chapter 1, verse 3 is the verse, and it's one of the blessings. It's the first blessing of Revelation. Guess how many blessings there are in Revelation?
7.
So this is the first one, and it's blessed, or Makarios, is the one who is reading this prophecy, and those, it's a participle, and those who are hearing this prophecy. So some translations will go, the blessed is the one who's reading, and those who hear, and then some translations, like you referenced earlier, some combine those two things and say read aloud. And so what it was it was a letter, and it was sent to these churches, and then someone would stand up front, like Tim Eucas and Ben Eucas would stand up front with the letter, and they would read the letter out loud to the congregation. And so it was saying, this is going to be a blessing to the one who's reading, and it's going to be a blessing to those who are hearing. So it's a translation decision just to describe this was the way that people would first encounter the book of Revelation. They would hear it being read aloud. And so that is a legitimate translation to say it that way, or you could just say it the way other translations say it. Blessed is the one who reads and the ones who hear. I do think there's some value in actually hearing this book. I recommended actually doing that. It takes 75 minutes to listen to the book. Spotify has that like Streetlights particular channel that you can listen to books of the Bible, and they have like a beat in the background, and it's really enjoyable to do that. I do think there's some value in letting your ears hear the book of Revelation be read, because you do pick up on some things. So if you are reading, I would encourage you to read it out loud if that's the way you want to study it, because there's something about you saying it and you hearing yourself saying it that is a blessing as you think about what's written here. Yeah. So does that help?
I have listened to it and read through it a couple times in preparation for this.
Wow.
it's
So
very
you're
cool.
ahead of the game.
I'm trying to do what I can do.
Wow.
Hey, Tim, I will say, though, based on what Dave said here, I think you missed an opportunity in your announcement section yesterday to not get
boy.
up there and have a scroll that you unrolled as you did announcements.
Maybe next time, maybe Ben and I will get some tunics.
Yeah.
And we will we'll get a scroll, and we will say, "Hear
That
ye,
would be
hear
exciting.
ye," in Greek.
Yeah.
And
I
we
did
will-
like
we
your
will
picture
read.
of the island of Patmos.
Thank you.
It made me think of The Last Jedi and Luke sitting on the island of wherever he was.
Technically speaking, I guess there were some mines there, so
Yeah.
people would get sent over there to be slaves in those mines. So terrible.
Wonderful. All right. Now, what other question was there?
We have a second kind of loaded question, so feel free to tackle it
Loaded
as you
question.
will. Next week, we are you going back to Revelation 1 through 8, 1 through 8? So anyone who didn't listen to the sermon, it'll be up at the same time as this podcast. Pastor Dave kind of did use 1 through 8 as like an introduction, as a springboard, if you will. So he's asking if you're going to go back there and see the brushstrokes. For example, verse 7, where Jesus is coming with the clouds. In verse 8, I am the Alpha and the Omega. Does everyone believe who their Alpha and Omega is? Are you progressing chapter by chapter or jumping around one chapter to another as it fits with the topic? So I think a good question is at the introduction here of a new sermon series.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think I can handle some of these brushstrokes today. Verse 7 about coming with the clouds is a clear reference to Daniel chapter 7, where the Son of Man comes in the clouds. So that's a reference to the Messiah who would come actually in judgment. So I think a lot of scholars are agreed upon that. There is also a second coming that gets affirmed later in the book, so perhaps you could see it as both end, but I think that's what that verse is talking about. Verse 8, about the Alpha and the Omega, I learned something. By the way, I'm going through like Dr. Plummer's Daily Dose of Greek with this, because he did Revelation. So
Oh, cool.
I was just watching him parse each of the verses 1 through 8, and I remember him talking about the Alpha and the Omega. The Alpha is actually spelled out A-L-P-H-A, and the Omega is just like the O. It's not spelled out like O-M-E-G-A, which I guess they didn't start doing that until 700 A.D., which is just an interesting point. But I think the questioner is asking, who is the Alpha and the Omega, and are we making a Trinitarian difference there? I do think that Revelation chapter 1 is Trinitarian. You see the reference to the Father, the Spirit, and the Son. John has really good theology, but both the Father, I think, in verse 8, is referred to as the Alpha and the Omega. And then later on in chapter 22, verse 13, you will see Jesus himself refer to himself as the Alpha and the Omega also. So I think that it's an appropriate title for the Father or the Son. And this just continues to affirm the fact that we serve one God who is three in one, and that the Son shares all the attributes and glory of the Father. So that title, Alpha and Omega, is a good one. It's sort of like a way, it's a merism, like from A to Z, from heaven to earth, from sea to shining sea. It's, all the way over there to all the way over here. It's basically saying that God is eternal. He's the first and the last. And so only God, of course, could have that kind of title. And it's shared by both the Father and the Son. So those are some references to the brushstrokes. In terms of what we're doing in the series, yes, we're going to go sequentially. We're not going to go topically through the book. It's an expositional study, so Pastor Bob will pick it up where I left off and so forth. We may not hit every brushstroke, but keep the questions coming. We'll try to hit them in Behind the Pulpit, and maybe some other times if there's some Teaching Tuesdays and things like that we need to fill in. But it should be a good, solid series where I think we're going to be able to answer a lot of your questions.
Yeah, I think we're going to cover the major sections as we go through. So,
and we'll be here till Christmas, so it's going to be a solid 4 months.
We're going to be ending 2024 with the new heavens and the new earth.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah. Boom. There you go. I don't know what we're going to do in 2025, but 2024 we're going to be in the eternal state.
Yeah. Maybe Mars.
Maybe. Yeah, that's true. There you go. Maybe we'll get there sooner. All right. What else do you want to say about the sermon before we wrap up here?
Well, I hope that's a blessing to you guys. We're really excited about this series. Just remember what we said to get the most out of it. Read this book for yourself. Study it. Get a good commentary on it. We would recommend a couple if you need them, but Steve Gregg's a good one to start with. I would also recommend to get your own journal for Revelations. Last series we got these Luke journals that were the ESV journaling Bibles with the big margin. Those are great. You can get those on Amazon. They sell them through the Book of Revelation. We didn't provide those for you, but you can get one and bring it to church each week. You can take notes about what God is saying to you. And then third, don't forget, we have small groups available for you to plug in and dive deeper into some of these brushstrokes. That's a great time to unpack some of the Book of Revelation that you're wrestling with. So try to get the most out of this series. Stick with us. It's going to be a great fall semester.
I will say you mentioned you had a joke in your sermon about pastors not wanting to preach on Revelation, even though everybody wants to hear about Revelation. And I will say, I feel like we've tried to cover a lot of books here at NBC that people don't want to preach on. I mean, we did Ecclesiastes. We're doing this. Maybe we're going to be doing, I don't know, Hosea next or something like that. Or another minor prophet. Haggai. Haggai is the next series.
I think that's great. We fully want to present the whole counsel of God for the people of God. It takes the whole Bible to make a whole Christian, and so we thought this was a good season to check out
people
the
to
end.
say, I never heard a sermon on this book until I came to Millington Baptist Church.
I'd love to be that church.
Let's be that church.
Let's be that church, Tim.
It's back,
Imagine
friends.
a church that preaches on the book of Haggai.
Let's be
that church.
Right. Okay, all right. So let's wrap up with some announcements here, Tim. What do we got on the list?
Are we sprinting?
Do you mind if we hold the sprint to next week? I'm a little out of breath right now.
All right. We can do that.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right, let's do the announcements. Do you have pictures, or do I need to?
Boom.
All right, fall launch. So people were a little confused this week. We kind of launched our adult ed on yesterday. We launched our new sermon series.
On the one hand, yes. On the other hand, the women's adult ed starts this coming Sunday. So ladies, check it out.
Okay, sorry about that. And then the ladies ministry had a big kickoff on Saturday. But everything else is beginning this week. So kids, teens, Awana's coming in a couple weeks, but we're going to be in full swing this coming week. There's going to be kids programming at both services. Teens are going to be back at 9 a.m. And then they're doing their big Wednesday kickoff next Wednesday. So we're getting in gear here, Pastor Dave. Things are happening.
They certainly are.
Sorry. Don't be too excited over there, okay? All right, what else do we have on there?
I just had a moment where I'm like, oh man, I'm in charge of half that stuff. I got a lot to do. Okay, yeah.
Podcasts are back in swing, obviously, behind the pulpits today. We're doing an Underground Sessions tomorrow. We got a lot of things coming up on the Underground Sessions this fall, Tim.
I just want to give a shout out to my daughter real quick.
This is the Fresh Wave. Fresh Wave will be back.
By youth.
And Johnny. There we go. There you go. All right, so Fresh Wave is back also.
What's up, Lou?
It's happening. All right. What else? What else do you got? Big one coming up. Underground Sessions.
Huge.
Sunday night.
Check out that graphic, man.
That is... Dude, Mark just blew up that graphic right there, quite literally.
What's cool about the graphic is like the ancient future thing. So you look on the bottom right, it's got like a first century Roman emperor, and then half of him looks like some kind of cyborg from AI and like what's coming. The bottom left, you got like a real locust plague that would be, present during the first century, and then of course we could still have locust plagues today. I guess
that's true. Yeah,
but then the other half is like an
Apache
helicopter.
They weren't going to have an Apache helicopter back then.
Then you got the 4 horsemen trotting away down at the bottom, and you got seals being busted from the scroll, and fires and nuclear war. It's
crazy.
My favorite part of this graphic.
We're covering it all. Anyway, so that night.
Wait, Tim. What?
Oh, I was going to say, since this is coinciding with our Revelation series, if you notice, the background.
I know. I actually had to ask Mark to do that, so he did a good job of overlaying it.
Go back for 1 second. Oh, very nice.
People are saying some of the best minds.
There you
go. Anyway, this save the date, October the 6th. It's going to be 5:30 to 7:30 is going to be the actual event. Did you think about
this? Did you coordinate this Underground Sessions with the sermon series?
Yes,
is this purposeful?
This was very purposeful. So we figured we'd cover some perspectives. The thing we're trying to do, we're going to have a round table. So what's going to be weird about this Underground Sessions is I'm not going to...
Is the shape of the table actually round, or...
Well, we haven't worked out what we're doing yet. If we're going to have a table or just chairs. But
so you're speaking in symbolic, apocalyptic, non-literal fashion right now. It's a round table, figuratively speaking.
It might be. I'm not sure. We'll see if it's going to be symbolic or literal. That's going to be a big discussion that night. But here, this is an unprecedented Underground Sessions because I'm actually not going to be the prime moderator for this. Pastor Dave is. I'm going to be on the panel because I'm representing one of the 4 views.
You can't just hit me up with this live on the show. This is not how you ask me to do things, man. You got to we have to have a talk.
It was
agreed
upon.
Scenes.
It was agreed upon.
All right, I forgot.
I said you would be the prime moderator. I'll help out. I'll close it out, but I got to represent one of the positions on the panel. We have four positions.
Bob's got to represent
dispensational premillennialism, historic premillennialism, which is me, amillennialism, and postmillennialism, and we're going to talk about all the adjacent issues and get into some Revelation stuff and end time stuff. So it's going to be good. How are you feeling about your part in this, Pastor Dave?
That's a lot of big words you just used, man. Dispensational, premillennial, amillennial.
We're going to talk about what it means. Yeah.
I got to get a glossary, Tim.
What about those of us who are panmillennial?
Not welcome.
Oh. I was going to say, I'm a panmillennial. You can put me up there, and you bring each question, I'd be like, it's all going to be good.
We're going to hit you over the head with a frying pan.
We'll see. Anyway, so save the date for that. Registration is coming out this week. Let us know you're coming. There is going to be an option to sign up for a dinner beforehand. So you'll want to register for that so we make sure we have the right amount of food for this event. There is childcare provided. It's going to be in the sanctuary, and it's going to be an amazing night. Boom.
Might be your last meal.
What does that mean? Is that a threat?
The end of the world, man. What's the title of this event? Are we at the end?
Is this the end? Yeah,
it better be a good one.
You're right. All right, you got anything to announce? I did all the announcements.
Hey, the shuttle is back.
Do this one.
We had a major parking shortage on Sunday. We had people on the grass. We had people on the street. We had people double parked. We had people just wanting to get in here, man. Tim was giving the SOS, the scooch over some announcement.
Dude, he did the sauce right there.
We need you to ride the shuttle. It is the best mobile foyer that you've ever experienced, and we hope that you will enjoy it. Check it out. Park over with our friends across the way. Say hi to Rabbi Mendy and Rabbi Mendel. Hop in, and you got to ride when you come into Millington, and then you're going to enjoy the ride.
Go ride the shuttle, man. Go ride the shuttle.
As you are.
Let's be that church.
So it's ready. Shuttle's ready. Starting up. Restart. Launching. Especially at the 9 a.m. If you're coming for the 9 a.m., you really need to grab the shuttle because the 9 a.m. is going to have a lot of kids back, youth back. We're going to need some spots.
Bringing baby back. Isn't there a song with that?
Baby back, baby
Anyway,
back.
my goodness. Ride the shuttle. That's the key thing.
Hop in the
we
mobile
need some
foyer.
people on that shuttle this coming week. So
We just got it
Good.
fixed up, man. We got the
Yeah.
tires like
Wonderful.
juiced up with air.
the
We
best
got-
shuttle
fixed
ride
the
you'll ever
sliding
have in your
door.
life.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's good. All right.
that was a big shuttle announcement.
Now, that's
That
all.
was
That's
way
all I
more
got.
than we should have said.
That is. That's all I got. You got anything else?
Ride
We
the
done?
shuttle.
Come on, can I go? Are we done?
Good to be back, Bob.
Good to
hey,
be back.
welcome back to Behind
Next
the
week
Pulpit.
from Behind the Pulpit.
Hope that you enjoyed our relaunch.
And yeah, we'll be back to talk about the second half of Revelation 1 next week, and we'll see what else comes up. Lots to talk about. God
Awesome.
bless.
Take care, guys.